is Pira Draculea, and we are inking some Ricky B, the rock and roll rat today. Missed the last couple Friday streams, but hey, here we are, we're back. And just as a reminder, this is what we were working on the last time, I guess 3 weeks ago. It's the point in the story where Ricky has made the mistake of asking his boss, Big Mike, because Big Mike was complaining about the wife wanting a bigger yacht. And Ricky asked if he knows anything about submarines, because Ricky had this vision or whatever, wherein he was told to go to the big shipwreck from the movie and get the big shiny rock to impress his girlfriend. And he doesn't really know anything about how to do that. So, anyways, we are carrying. Why am I showing this? Well, A, because we've missed a couple weeks' shows, so as a reminder, and also because Big Mike's comment here is going to lead us right into what we're working on next, which is about the Russians, quote, taking suckers down there. This story is inspired partially in terms of Ricky building a submarine out of junk. It's partially inspired by the whole um, Titan implosion and that. And one of the things that I learned at that time was about how um, the Russians were apparently taking tourists down to see the wreck of the Titanic for a while. Very expensive trip, but anyway. So Big Mike is making a comment about that. And that leads us to our very first page of the night, which is an advertising. We have the B story in this book is um, all about advertising and, intrusive ads, eavesdropping on your conversations, that sort of stuff. So, just kind of trying to show we have a bit of a shadow from my laptop here, but I think we're okay. So, the ad in this case, something has been eavesdropping on Ricky's conversation with Big Mike and is serving up an ad about Russian subs taking, as Big Mike would put it, suckers down to the Titanic. I don't think they do that anymore, but apparently a number of years ago that was quite common. So we are going to start with this ad about the submarines. And I don't know much about the Russian alphabet Cyrillic. I do know that that isn't actually how they make the R sound, but it's kind of a common comic goof that you do the backwards R. I think that's actually like the sound for A or something like that. It's a vowel sound as far as I know in Cyrillic, but why let a pesky little thing like reality get in the way of a good typography joke, eh? That's what I always say. Well, I don't say it all the time, but it's what I say in this situation. So the lettering's gonna play a little bit off of kind of the stereotypical Russian lettering from old propaganda posters and whatnot. And the punchline about in Russia, subs nuke you. Well, that's a nod to the great Yakov Smirnov and the kind of punchlines he was doing back in the 80s and whatnot. I don't know. He might still do jokes like that now. It is, yeah. It is, yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Kind of a YA, yeah, kind of a sound, right? Thank you, Sam, and welcome to the show. Um, I will admit my knowledge of Slavic language is very limited. My dad was born in what was Poland at the time. It's now Western Ukraine, close to Ternopil, but I never really got a lot of Polish. I think in my dad's generation, the attitude was kind of when you emigrated, well, now you become American or you become Canadian or wherever you're moving, and then that's kind of it. So didn't quite pick up on, didn't really get taught much of the language, and as an adult, whenever I've tried to learn Polish, kind of useless at it. Mind you, Polish, it wouldn't matter anyways because Polish is written in the, Roman alphabet, same as English, so still wouldn't help with the Cyrillic, but yeah. The sound at least, the sounds are similar, I think. My dad would, watch, if there was Russian TV, like, community what is it called? I think it used to just be called the Multicultural Channel, in Vancouver or whatnot, but it's kinda like public access, and they'd have different programs in different languages and whatnot, so he used to watch, like, the Russian stuff, he said he could make out the gist of what they were saying, um, but maybe not the details, um, but don't think they definitely don't have that where we live now, I don't think. I think the cable packages are kinda like pay extra, and then it would be like a specific channel, like, if someone's Chinese, they could get Chinese language channels or whatever, but then there isn't one that kind of has a mix of, different language shows, so anyways, what I'm planning to do here is have a dark background, that's why I'm outlining these letters. And the blue drawing, in case anyone's wondering, that is a non-photo blue pencil. So when this gets scanned in black and white, in theory, any of this light blue stuff goes bye-bye, and you just have the black drawing and the white paper. In reality, sometimes you end up having to do a little photoshopping, but it generally knocks out most of the underdrawing. So, excuse me. And I think before we get too much into the drawing here, I'm going to take the opportunity. Well, I can rub my hand around here and not smudge anything to kind of black in the background there, um, which we will do with a fatter nib because otherwise we will be here forever, forever and ever and ever. I think I did do one previous spread that where I had the letters reversed like that, and it was a long haul to get that all done, but I was also using it trying to do it with a narrower pen nib, so, you know, I suppose is the lazy way to do it, I guess, would be to do the lettering in black, and then you basically end up scanning it twice, and once you on one of the scans, you would do that on a layer where you would invert it, in Photoshop, and then the area around the sub, you wouldn't invert it, and then you just kinda, like, tidy up around the edges, but I don't know, I find they don't it doesn't quite look the same, like, not that there's anything wrong with doing it that way, but sometimes it doesn't have the same look in the or vibe or whatever. Yeah, we did get a little boo-boo happening there, but again, Mr. Photoshop fixes everything. Well, maybe not everything, but it'll fix that for sure. But I will make a note here about, and fix. Well, that's kinda off, frame, but then it'll kind of in theory, I will pay attention to that and notice. It always ends up being a few things that, you have to redo, and to avoid a repeat of that, I'll kinda keep out of the points with this nib because it's fairly fat, um, and then we'll just do those kinda interior corners with a different nib in a few minutes. Now, this is the sort of thing where sometimes I use a brush for this sort of thing. I do have them, but I find I gotta get some better quality brushes. Some of mine look like that, and you can imagine that trying to get into details, it's not gonna hold a point, so it's gonna, goober up the ink worse than a nib would. So, somewhere I swear I used to have a pen or not a pen, a brush that I did use for filling in backgrounds and stuff like that with this kind of, um, ink. This is by the way, I'm using India ink in case anyone's wondering. I use Demco. Speedball Super Black also works. I used to like Speedball Super Black a lot more years ago. Last year or so, last couple bottles I've had of it haven't been great. So I don't know. Uh, could be me not shaking it up enough. Could be, who knows? But giving this stuff a try, and it seems to be working so far. So, um, anyways, what I was saying about brushes, definitely there's a whole art to doing inking with just brushes, and it has its own look and vibe as well. Um, you definitely want a good one that holds a point, or else you're just kind of smearing ink around. But it can look really amazing if you get the right brush and have the right amount of practice for it. When we get into these little nooks and crannies, kind of want to go a little slower and a little more cautious. Um, I think the last time I was doing reverse lettering like this, I actually did around the letters and the corners first with the finer nib and then filled in around. But then the temptation is to take that finer nib out, into say these areas, and then it just ends up being really slow. So I do think it's faster to kind of do it this way, get the big blotches, and uh, then come in after to get the little corners and whatnot. Some of this is not going to be exactly even coverage, but it will end up giving a little bit of subtle texture in the final drawing once everything's said and done and shrunk down and whatnot. So, kind of nice sometimes to do it that way and not worry as much about getting an even blackout. Although I know there are certainly some cartoonists, especially old style, I think, where it was like being able to get an even blackout by hand was kind of a point of pride. But I know I'm sloppy. I call that part of my style, so I don't get concerned about it, put it that way. Actually, at my local community, um, arts council's gallery on Monday, I will be giving a demo of doing pen and ink work. Although, don't know if I'll do anything, any pages from the Ricky Go B Goes to Sea book, or whether I'll just do something that's like a one-off, kind of a page that's not part of a project. Guess it depends if I have time to draw something fresh over the weekend, or whether I just go look in the book and grab something that's ready to go that I haven't had a chance to ink yet. So what's gonna end up happening with the B story with all these ads is at some point, I think it's about 12 pages away, so 4 or 5, shows down the road, Ricky suddenly starts noticing these ads, starts wondering why they're in his story, and then starts asking questions, and then he meets the ad rep, and that's all I'll say about it for now. Let's see if we get through 3 pages today like we've been doing the last couple of Ricky streams. Be kind of awesome if we do. I think in that case, we've got this ad page, then we've got go back to the story for 1 page, and then there's another ad that comments on the story. So, and we wanna fix the U in subs. Now the text down here, don't think I'm gonna do reversed out like this. I think we're gonna kinda have a gradient in the background, and then this'll area will be light, so the lettering can then be black, which is so much simpler and more pleasant to do. Um, but we'll get there when we get there. And we have a couple of mushroom clouds to draw in. I guess they're supposed to have a bit of a ring around here or something. Obviously, well, if this was a submarine under the ocean, you wouldn't really get the mushroom cloud, but the story is told by Ricky, and he probably didn't pay much attention in any science class when they might have been discussing nuclear explosions or nuclear energy or whatnot. So we will assume he doesn't know that you don't actually get mushroom clouds under the water. Of course, Ricky being Ricky with the hobbies he has, he would just want to know if these are hallucinogenic mushroom clouds. Anyway, so the top of the submarine would have a hatch here. And that would have like some sort of a little turny knob thing. Well, probably not actually, but we're just going to go with that. And then there's kind of a fin here. And we'll draw the rest of the sub. We'll kind of do the page in sections as we go down, right? So Yeah, we'll probably get rid of those little just trying to show like a whirligig kind of sense of movement, but I think it's just gonna look like a mistake in a bunch of black water, so we will just go over it. Now, I think what I'm gonna establish too is kind of a rough line at which I want the water to kind of fade down into white. Well, won't be white really, but into not black, put it that way. We will use some hatching on the sub because, of course, subs tend to be dark black. But that's something we will probably do with the thinner nib because then we can get a lot of like cross hatchy kind of texture, right? Very technical term, cross hatchy. I'll also use the thinner nib to put some texture into those mushroom clouds. Uh, once we get the kind of heavy black done. This one almost looks like the submarine is farting. The angle, but all right. Now we move back to the skinnier nib and put some texture and shading in on those. We're getting stuck to the drop sheet already. And of course, we want to fill in. I think I'm going to take off the little, well, I'm obviously am taking off the little wheel lifter thingy. It's probably an anachronism, I think, in general. They open them from the inside. Or not, but you probably open it electronically anyways. Hello, Ibrahim. Ibrahim, welcome to the stream. So we're going to kind of do this sort of texture. Hello again. Yeah, of course, if you're deep under the ocean, you don't really have an actual light source like we're pretending this one does, but never let physics, real world physics, get in the way of a good illustration. That's what I always say. Beautiful pictures. Oh, I thank you, Ibrahim. Add a little more dark into the fins of the propeller later, but it's kind of easy to overdo it at this stage and then make things way too dark. So it's better to kind of leave a little bit of room because you can always go darker later, right? So add more of the cloud texture in this one as well. Summary, yep, it's supposed to be a nuclear sub. The joke is about this character who wants to go down to the wreck of the Titanic and is thinking he might build his own submarine, and his boss tells him um, that the Russians take suckers down to see it, which at one point they did take tourists, they, where it would kind of fund research vessels and all that. I don't think that happens anymore, but um, so we have a bit of a Yakov Smirnoff esque joke there, and then the idea is this is supposed to be an advertisement that interrupts the story, um, advertising Russian subs to go to the Titanic. Because the book has a B story, like a sub story about advertising, interrupting things, and kind of nodding at if you've ever had a conversation with a friend and then suddenly something that your friend mentioned you're starting to get ads for on Facebook. It's kind of spoofing that sort of thing as well. Although the way this thing's getting drawn, it's gonna end up looking a little bit more like a torpedo, but I mean, torpedoes and submarines kind of tend to look very similar shape, right? Um, I actually live in Canada, although pretty close to the U.S. part of Canada. Well, I guess most people in Canada live pretty close to the U.S. border. So, of course, a lot of Canadians like to pretend that we don't live right next to the US, but, that's a whole other discussion. Uh, there's actually some parts of Canada, including the part that I live in, that are basically kind of surrounded by the States. Because where I'm at on Vancouver Island, Vancouver Island kind of dips down like this. Um, and then we're kind of surrounded by Washington State with the Olympic Peninsula and whatnot. They've got different islands. So we're south of most of Canada, like most of the Canada-US border cuts across like that. Um, and I kind of live around there. So I think uh, actually, I think a large part of Ontario, towards the center of the country also is south of the 49th parallel as well. All sorts of stuff going back to the 1800s and where the border was gonna get drawn based on where which, trading company had which forts and all that sort of stuff. I will do some horizontal lines as well to match the cross-hatching here, but I wanna get the basic longer, um, longer lines in first. Let's push this back so it's fully on. Think what I'm going to do as kind of a nod to the, tourist submersibles is a lot of times they have a big window, so I'm gonna make pretend as if this is a acrylic viewport type of thing, and, since the characters in this story are rats, rat people, we'll draw a little rat dude in there, looking out. Right at the tip. Of course, it's a little bit difficult to convey the idea of glass or like going looking through a porthole in pen and ink, all black. So it could also be interpreted that they just have a rat dude painted on the nose of the sub, but it's supposed to be where he's actually down there. As far as I know, the Coast Guard and the NTSB and whatnot never did recover the acrylic viewport the from the Titan submersible that went boom boom a couple years ago. One presumed it just got when the thing exploded, it just popped off like a champagne cork, and then of course it's clear, so uh, at some point they may find it when they're looking at wreckage of the actual Titanic. Be like, hey, what the hell is this? But you know, there'll be quite some time from now. I did see there's a channel that talks a lot about the Titanic, ocean liner designs, and he actually had a video couple sometime in the last week or 2 about this company Magellan, went down and they scanned the debris field of the Titanic and, finally released very detailed, video footage that they made from that, but I think they had gone down a couple months before the Titan submersible, so they're showing the debris field without any, Titan, um, stuff down there, um, so it's a fascinating video, kinda morbid, but, and so hard to get the scale. It's like you look at the pictures and it's like, "Oh, that could be a piece of debris the size of this," and then he talks about, "Okay, you see that's the double hull, that's about 6 feet thick," and you go, "Oh my god. Oh." Scale's kinda hard to comprehend, but yeah, anyways. So let's start adding in some of these curvy kinda lines, as well as some of these sort of things. I'm not too concerned about the fact that I start here and it doesn't quite connect and it connects later, because again, that, just gives some varied texture, right? So, should we christen this submarine? I think we should. I feel the urge to call it the SS Dumturist, which is mean, but also kind of accurate. Uh, but we'll misspell it so it's less obvious. Although I guess if they try and say it's pronounced Doom Tourist, that actually kind of is even worse. As in, you are doomed if you go down there. I'm suddenly reminded of some of the competing theories about what makes comedy. Some people say comedy is when bad things happen to other people. That's kind of an awful way of looking at it. Some people say it's tragedy plus time. Say it's just kind of when expected patterns are disrupted. Although, you kind of look and go, I don't know. Is there really anything that not expected about a submersible made from expired carbon fiber, going boom. In which case, the funny thing would be that it went multiple times before that happened. Anyways, that's kind of a morbid topic, I guess. But it is one that kind of underpins a lot of, the story. Like the main character, Ricky, I was already doing one panel cartoons with Ricky in from about March 2023. Um, and that was when the Titan submersible incident uh, happened, and we were hearing about the incompetence and all that with Ocean Gate and
things like the expired carbon fiber and all that, where I was kind of thinking, I have a character who doesn't know a damn thing about the ocean, who could make mistakes like that. And then it ended up spawning the story. But I mean, as far as what happens to Ricky, I don't want to give spoilers away, but I will say this isn't the only graphic novel starring Ricky B. Rat. So you can draw your own conclusions about what happens to Ricky in the end. He does not. He doesn't get squished by the deep ocean pressures. We'll just put it that way. Um, but I think what I'm gonna do is kind of have like a cloud-like gap here for the text, and then not make it the rest of it as black as that, but have a lot of darker areas and have it quite dark next to the sub so that it stands out. Anyways, let's do that. Do we do the lettering first? No, let's fill in some more of the blacks around and give the depths of the sea some depth. All right. But I am gonna kind of leave some holes in the dark here and not have it as heavily black, I guess. I just realized I forgot to draw in the Titanic in this little ad, so we should do that maybe right about here or something like that. That famous bow. And by the way, I guess this would be as good a time as any to give the standard YouTuber plug. If you're enjoying the stream and you would like to see more of this sort of thing, do subscribe. I do live streaming every weeknight, Monday to Friday, barring illness or whatever, but usually live at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Ricky is what I work on Friday nights. Currently on this particular graphic novel, and when this one's done, we will move on to the next graphic novel. And then Ricky's buddy, who is Miles Marov, is we're working on a book project with featuring Miles on Mondays. And then Wednesdays, we've got another character of mine, Zommel the Destroyer. And Zommel is a very obnoxious iguana, very opinionated iguana. And then Tuesday and Thursday, we are working on projects related to another cartoon world of mine called Noah's Archipelago. So, whole variety of projects going on this channel. And then usually it's on Saturdays, I post kind of a weekly recap of all the art I've been making for anybody who's missed anything. So yeah, anyways, you know the usual YouTubey kind of stuff, like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. And now we will get on to inking the text. And as I said earlier, rather than do it reversed like at the top, we're just going to have black lines here. And I'll kind of do some of these cloudy kind of lines around this after the lettering is in. I'm going to use a medium-sized nib so that I don't have to do like 3 strokes at a time. To get things nice and fat. So there. Of course, if you want something fat but also jagged, then yeah, you kind of got to use the thinner nib and just keep scrubbing away at it. But for here, you're just going to go for fairly bold. I'm not too worried about making things, very tidy in the lettering. If I was going to do that, then I would have used like a calligraphy nib and done it beforehand and let it dry and all that stuff, right? Now, I don't recall if the story was that the Russian research subs accepted payment in crypto. With the time frame we're talking about, probably not necessarily, but I don't know. It's funnier if you say they want to be paid in crypto. I don't know why. Well, I guess some of it would be, certain stand-up comedians and people who've worked for like Letterman and shows like that insisted that certain letters sounded funnier than others, and K sounds, often words with hard Ks or Ps, like kind of plosives, those kind of consonants, that they tend to sound funnier. Um, like one, forget which book it was in, but it was one comedy writing book that I read years ago. The guy talked about when he worked for Letterman, he found out that Letterman liked the word spackle. So there's some joke he made about like Joan Rivers layering on the makeup, and you could describe it in a few different ways: mud, plaster, all this sort of stuff. But he used the word spackle, and Letterman just loved it because there's something about it. It just sounds funny. And who knows why? I don't know if that applies in other languages, but it seems to be the way in English. So crypto then instead of, well, cash could work as well, but crypto then has kind of two of those hard sounds, so it just seems to sound funnier. I don't know. Maybe I'm not making it up. I'm basing it on things I've read, but I don't know if it's really that true, but it seems to be. So there we go. Take you to the Titanic. Now let's actually draw the Titanic, which I forgot to do in my underdrawing, but that's okay. Probably the further I get in this book, the more I draw it from memory rather than from reference photos, the goofier it's gonna keep looking, but that's fine. So we have the railing is still on the boat, like the front bow section. And do that. Assume that those are filled in with black. I don't know if it's 3. I think it's probably more than 3, but um, and for whatever reason, the bow of the Titanic, as far as I know from the photos, it kind of is actually like just standing upright. So this is, I don't know, it's probably like 100 feet or something. Maybe it's not that much, but it's not squashed flat. The stern is torn to pieces and squashed flat. Um, so Again, I think the company that did the, wreckage scanning there, that just released it in the last month or 2, I think they're called Magellan. So, if you're into that kind of stuff, it's the footage I've seen is pretty amazing, and there's a YouTube channel called Ocean Liner Designs, and, I mean, he doesn't exclusively talk about the Titanic, but he talks a lot about the Titanic, and he's got a lot of videos on what's what down there and all that, so recommended viewing. I can remember when I was a kid in the '80s, what's the guy's name? Ballard, I think. Dr. Ballard went down there with an ROV and was the first one to find the wreckage and, take photos and send them back, and they were in National Geographic magazine. It was such a big thing, right? And that was well before the whole James Cameron Titanic movie and all that. Now I'm gonna fade, this stuff in with the big fat, nib. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of shading with this thinner pen. I think I've said on these Friday streams before, just because this book is inspired by the Titan submersible implosion and all that, that story. That my friend Tiffany and I are got really interested in watching, all the hearings and all that. So it's kind of interesting to look at how much people are wanting to go see this old shipwreck. Um, Although I think probably that implosion maybe has put a cramp in that. I don't know. It's interesting human psychology, I guess, about going to see tragedy sites and whatnot, and then you have the movie with the love story and all that crap that kind of also has a other element to it as well. And now the rest we're gonna black out. So which one of these is the fat nib? There we go. We are almost moving on to page 2 of the night. Just this last little bit to go. All right. I think that page is done and we are going to move on back to the main story. So, again, this was supposed to be an ad interrupting this story where Ricky's boss is kind of being a dick, tells them to forget going down to see the Titanic and just watch, quote, the stupid movie. So, back to that. And I'll just set that aside for it to dry. That's for page 3, which we may not get to. So, the narrator is Ricky. And now, what I haven't done so much, I talked about this before, where the narration, traditionally, you would put a box around your narration. Um, thus far in the book, have not done that, but I am going to do it going forward. And at some point, I'll go fix it in the back because on some panels, it gets kind of awkward to tell what's going on. So we will take the medium nib, and I'm not worried about making a super thick line, but we're just gonna and then the nib is going to fight with me today, I guess. Let's do that. I'll do this one when we get down here because otherwise my wrist is gonna smear it. And back to the narrow nib. And let's get going. So after being obnoxious and mouthing off at Ricky, which I mean, hey, Big Mike is the boss, so Big Mike gets to do this. By the way, these guys work in a recording studio. Big Mike is a record producer. So that's some context as well. Ricky's what they call a runner, which is to say it's his job in the studio to go fetch beer and pizza and whatnot. Sometimes the runners also have like cleaning duties, which is what Big Mike um, tells Ricky to go do in order to shut the conversation down. Um, but often the cleaning is going to be done by an intern. Um, Depends on the recording studio. And nowadays, of course, recording studios are kind of, I don't want to say they're becoming dinosaurs, but a lot of them are. A lot of even successful artists record at home. Um, Not like your biggest guys, like U2 and whatnot, they have their own private studio in their headquarters in Dublin, which is a professional level, recording studio, but I definitely know of artists who are, like, touring artists full-time, musicians and whatnot, and they record on their laptop at home in their home, in the spare bedroom at home type of idea, so, um draw a little bit of a grease stain here in the pizza box. So, it's gonna be one of those things that kind of future generations will be like, What is this that they're talking about when, we're talking about albums being recorded in recording studios and whatnot?" I sort of have a background in audio engineering. I did go to audio school. Um, Used to have it would be a stretch to call it a career, but I used to record a lot of, like, industrial electronica music and whatnot, about it's been 10 years since I put out my last album, but, I did go to audio school in order to learn audio engineering, even though I always kinda knew I wasn't gonna work in the studios, but I wanted to not have to pay somebody else to record my stuff, so anyways, but some of what we're seeing in this story is kinda based on not anyone in particular who I used to know, very important to say that for liability reasons, but culturally and whatnot, it's based on things I saw, things I heard about, rumors, all that sort of added common attitudes, that sort of stuff. So, um, wow, must have been a special day. Big Mike's actually wearing his wedding ring in this drawing. Usually, Big Mike is the sort of guy who frequently does not wear his wedding ring, but I don't feel like going back and looking at the other drawings to see if he was wearing it in previous ones. Besides, I used to know he shall remain unnamed, but I did once know a record producer who he'd show up in the studio first thing in the morning after dropping his kid off at school, and he'd be wearing his wedding ring. And within 5 to 10 minutes, the wedding ring was missing. It was in his pocket. you know, um, actually, I heard, just say that I heard about an incident. Um, we had a client, and the drummer of this band was Catholic, I guess. And when they would go out to smoke weed, the drummer would ask him, "Why aren't you wearing your wedding ring?" So he put his wedding ring on, he had it in his pocket. And then when the drummer wasn't looking, they'd take the ring off. And it was kind of this thing throughout this whole recording session. And it was a thing I heard about. It was very kind of hilarious, kind of awful, but hilarious all the same. It's kind of hard to draw pizza from the side and have it look right, but anyways, kind of get the sense. Now, where is the rest of the pizza box is coming down about like there, we'll say. And we want to add a box around it, then added. And I'll draw this one before I put in the panel borders and whatnot. So, actually, I had a different project, the Nick White Show, which I think on my like channel page, if you scroll down to the very bottom, I believe I have the Nick White Show YouTube channel linked below. But that was a kind of a farcical, weird comedy where I was like setting up Barbie dolls and almost like different tableaus, and then I was recording voiceovers. So it was like a kind of halfway between a comic book and a sitcom, like a 3D video comic book. Anyways, but I did have one episode that was inspired by the whole wedding ring thing, which I never did actually get around to recording, but I might actually be working on a Nick White book at some point, though. Kind of got to figure out how I would do that. Well, I mean, the writing bit, but a lot of my life has changed in the few years since I was working on the Nick White show, and part of me is kind of like, "Ooh, how would you even do this?" Got a lot of very rude stuff said in that, which is funny, but you know, in my middle agedom, I've kind of evolved into a church lady, and that's where I kind of go like, I don't know, if I put out the Nick White show and any of my friends read that book, I'm gonna have some explaining to do. Which would be one thing if the copyright date was like 2021 or something, but if it's 2027 or 2028, then it's like, ooh, you're gonna have some splaining to do. Anyways, whatever. Um, that's a problem for future current Pira doesn't have the time to work on yet another graphic novel, especially because I just decided that Noah's Archipelago is going to pivot from being a twice weekly um, webcomic into being a graphic novel project. So my to-do list is full, I guess is the point of that. Just had to stop and look because I'm drawing Big Mike's left wrist with a bracelet on it, and then I'm like, wait a minute, what wrist does he wear his watch on? Try saying that 5 times really fast. But no, he wears his wrist on the right hand, so we are good. Just draw his greasy pizza. I also realized it's kind of hard to figure out how to. Drawing somebody holding pizza is a little weird, especially from like this angle, but whatever. Mike is wearing one of his favorite Hawaiian shirts. There. Now, let's box in that little bit of narration as well. I'm going to have to, I don't know if it'll happen this weekend, but I'll have to pull out all the prior Ricky pages that I've done. This is page 30, although some of the pages in the front of the book um, aren't actually are like blank pages or just like front matter, like the title page and stuff. But we do have a certain amount of narration to just kind of box in like so. And some of the previous art doesn't really accommodate it, but we'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. Worst case scenario, there's our friend Mr. Photoshop when all is said and done and the book is all drawn. I would expect it'd probably take me 2 months of photoshopping to get it ready for print, but that'll be probably sometime next year. What I do plan on getting out this year is the first Noah's Archipelago comic treasury, and then kind of an omnibus comic treasury for Zommel the Destroyer, because it's the 20th anniversary of when I started that comic, or that project, because it was a comic and then it was like a podcast. So I'd like to get that one out this fall. So we got a nice thick, some comics will do their panels kind of like, I use a pencil where they'll just kind of do them as boxes and then have like a white space in between with the border. I tend to be messy, so I would assume the white space will get messed up. That's why I just do a big fat black border in between. I've been doing it that way since the mid 2000s with Zommel the Destroyer, so seems to work. Anyways, and now we will put this big fat line here. Probably go over it a couple times. And then we have another narration, so let's do that. The idea is I'm trying to draw it so that's visibly thinner, right, than the panel borders, although this particular panel border is a little because the or something was a little bit too low in that panel border. The next graphic novel I do, I think instead of just drawing a single line through, I'm actually going to like outline the panel borders because I can fill them in with ink. But that way we kind of avoid, and it's a problem I noticed with the Zombie the Destroyer stuff from the reboot that I just finished because I had drawn it and the words were really close to the panel borders in a lot of places, and that kind of made it awkward to draw. So, um, you know, stuff you kind of learn along the way. Now I'm going to kind of darken in the back here of Big Mike, but also it'll end up kind of making it look like there's a glow around him. And because the nib is a little bit out of ink, then we don't end up with like a solid black. We'll end up where it kind of looks gray because of there. Uh, Here, I'm just gonna kind of add a shadow as if these boxes are kind of on a table or something. There. Now, we've got so Ricky's been told to go clean the toilets or something. So he goes and he cleans them. I will tidy up this that lettering was probably messed up in 2023 when I first laid things out and started on the pages. But we can fix that in Mr. Photoshop. And so Ricky is cleaning the toilets and he's imagining dunking Big Mike's head in one of them. So let's get to it. And nice, bold kind of thought bubble outline. I'll do the rest of that afterwards, but we're going to start kind of working left to right. So let's see here. We would presumably have the corner of the toilet stall. Right about like that. Yeah, maybe we got a little bit of a tile thing going on. Let's go here, go there. Couple places where we that, but I'm not going to worry too much about drawing in like every tile or whatnot. Just giving more the impression that it is tiled. Right. Yeah, probably the ground goes there. So we'll black that in a little bit. Don't black in too much because Ricky wears black, so don't want it to turn into a big blob. So now we're going to assume that this is a little bit this way because of the laws of perspective or whatever, but we're not going full perspective. We're just kind of given the sense that, you know, this wall's going that way and that one's that way. By kind of having the line get thicker and thinner, it also gives the impression that some of these grout lines are disgusting, you know, and some of them are very clean. And assuming that the grout is white or light color, it may kind of disappear at times and be darker at others. So there's our thing. And we need the toilet lid. And the bathrooms are disgusting. Now, Ricky as the runner, he would have some cleaning duties, but there is actually an intern at this studio as well. Although I hadn't invented the character yet at the time that I wrote this story. Anyways, the official intern is Intern Dave. Ricky and Intern Dave do not get along. They hate each other. So it would seem that Intern Dave has not been cleaning appropriately as he ought to. Either that or, yeah, forget now. The story starts on a Monday morning and Ricky has to go to work. So this is like a Monday afternoon. So it's possible that they just had a party on the weekend and things are absolutely gross and disgusting due to heavy drinking on Saturday and, well, throughout the weekend. I'm kind of envisioning what I'm drawing here as being vomit, not other bodily fluids or, yeah. So, but either way, it's gross. And yes, you absolutely, throughout the history of the music industry, you have absolutely had recording studios that charged, you know, $1,000, $2,000 US a day rate for bands to go in and use them. um, who then did not pay for cleaning staff because that was something they would just make the interns do for free. That's kind of how that worked. And probably still does work in the few big studios that remain. Um, anyway, so Ricky's got. I think I'm gonna. I think I originally drew that as a cloth, but I think I'm gonna kind of make it into a sponge. With a bunch of holes and whatnot. And it's obviously an old, beat up, disgusting sponge. And one would hope that he's not also using this very same sponge to clean the kitchenette counters. But yeah, at least he's wearing gloves for himself. Yeah, mystery fluids on the floor. I mean, in reality, I think if the bathroom looked like this in most studios, the intern would have immediately been fired. but but it wouldn't be as funny if the bathroom was already clean, right? So thank you, intern Dave, for not doing your job. Hi, G3 San. How's it going? Welcome to the stream. Alright, so now Ricky, finally, we get to the title drawing the title character. It's only an hour and 20 minutes into the stream. Draw his big old ears here. I forgot to draw Ricky's whiskers in the underdrawing. Oh well. We may kind of correct some of this in Photoshop. As well, it's true that the front of his cheek would kind of puff out. It looks a little weird in the drawing. So, anyways. Got a big old droplet of ink going down, but that kind of works. Since Ricky is wearing his black leather jacket. Ricky's got a bit of a case of plumber's butt here. Of course, he's a rat, so he also has his tail coming out under his jacket. And we've got some random, supposedly submarine parts. Porthole here, which would be more like a cruise ship thing. But Ricky don't really know the difference now. So it all kind of goes together into one little daydream fantasy, finding parts for his sub and sticking Big Mike's head in the toilet, which we will get to momentarily. Got some coins falling out of Big Mike's pocket, although, whether it's that obvious that that's what those are, who knows, who cares? I will say if your intention, if your dream is to hold your boss upside down, stick their head in the toilet, you should probably be in the gym lifting weights a lot more than Ricky ever does. But, don't worry about those kind of details, I guess. Also, I think at the time I did this initial drawing, Big Mike wasn't nearly as fat as he eventually ended up being. Continue on a little bit of the tile texture in the background here. And I guess that's kind of where the floor starts. Now, I know most toilets have the handle kind of on the front side, but we don't really see the front side of this toilet tank, so we're going to just pretend it's there on the side instead. And then there's Ricky's imagination about finding a propeller for his submarine. He had asked the boss, "Well, can't I build my own?" And the boss pointed out that that would probably be about $50 million. Ricky does have a cousin who builds hot rods, though. But yeah, well, that'll come up in, I think it'll be 2 or 3 weeks before we get to that part of the story. But, anyways, I like doing these, like, almost like starbursts around items. Kind of fun, kind of easy to draw. Breaks up the background a little bit, like that. And then yeah, why don't we add a little sound effect for Ricky where he's laughing. Oh, right. I forgot Big Mike's other arm. Oops. That isn't the front of the tank. It's kind of part of his shirt. Anyways, we'll have to do some photoshopping here as well. Making a note for myself to fix Big Mike's wrist. Um, there we go. And I'll draw this last little cartoon of Ricky. He is scrubbing away and he is furious. Now, this is a narration, but, you know, there's nothing else in the scene. So, I'll probably leave it unboxed. Mm. And the next page is another sort of B story ad. I think it's going to be a pretty quick one to draw. So, um, got about oh, 20 minutes left in the period that I would normally be streaming in. Usually go till about 8:30, but we can run a little late today. And and then we will get our ad for Intern Depot in, which kind of relates to all this sort of stuff. So we need the fat nib to put in a little bit of background and the panel border. And put a little bit of detail into those rubber cleaning gloves because we've got some shadow here and we don't there. So we'll just tidy that up just a little bit. Boink, 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 boink. Just gives them a little bit of dimensionality. And, oh yeah, gotta finish off the thought bubble there. And now on to page 3, which is back to our B stories with the interrupting ads. I'm just looking for a spot that I can put this down where I'm not going to have any ink touching a different finished drawings. So, interesting. Looks like we got a bit of a odd shadow in between. Uh, Anyways, so our ad then here is for Intern Depot. And all the things that interns may need when they have terrible bosses like Big Mike. So, that, of course, is a toilet brush, obviously. But let's start with lettering the letters. Nice and bold, not too much detail. We're not blacking out the background. So, this one's going to go relatively quick, famous last words. But yeah. And again, Ricky isn't actually an intern, but if I said Runner Depot, well, that would imply something completely different, right? Imply Ricky gets exercise, which he probably really doesn't. Anyways. Joking with my brother that when this book comes out, it might be an idea. I don't know if I'd do this. I probably actually wouldn't, but it would be funny to kind of try and Google around, see if I could find out the names of um, assistant engineers and other kind of lower on the totem pole people working at some major recording studios and mail copies of the book, you know, to those interns and assistant engineers because they'd probably find Ricky hilarious. Don't know if I'd do it with this one because I mean, this part of the story of the setup is indeed set in the recording studio, but I have another story, which I don't know if it would be the second or third um, Ricky graphic novel. But that story is, I mean, well, I can give it away because when I was doing the Ricky podcast, an earlier version of it was on there, but the episode, the sea rat infestation, about one of those win to get in radio um, contest concerts with a big band, and then the concerts in this recording studio and all the things that go on that way. That one would probably be one that I might consider if I had the budget to, mail out like 30 or 40 copies to different recording studios and address them to like the assistant engineers and all that if I could find that information. Um, See how that would work as a marketing tool. Don't really have contact with any of the guys I used to know when I was in the business. Well, some of my best contacts from those years are dead, or they left the industry, or, moved away and got into, working for TV stations or whatever. Uh, I might still kind of try and look up some of those guys, some of the survivors, and send them copies. Um, but anyways, that is for the future. Got some ink on the stick, so now it's on my finger. We've reached the points of every show in which this particular nib wants to start digging in and cutting up the paper rather than drawing. But that's okay. We're getting close to being done anyways, so. Also, these pages for the ads for the B story were done later, so they're actually most of these I think are that recycled Bristol board, which with a vellum surface, so it does tend to get shredded more than the smooth vellum, than the smooth surface Bristol board that isn't recycled. But it is what it is. It's workable. So Intern Depot. And now we get to make a whole bunch of random scratchy kind of lines to represent toilet brush bristles. Suppose another way marketing sort of scheme would be to look up prominent musicians who used to work in recording studios because some of them did before they got famous, right? Um, and see if I could find like a mailing address going, hey, this, you might get a kick out of this or something like that. Uh, some of them are known to have good senses of humor. I remember hearing years ago that when Adam Carolla was doing Mr. Burcham on was it K Rock, I think, in LA. And a couple of his biggest fans were Axl and Duff from Guns N' Roses because Mr. Burcham reminded them of when they were teenagers having taking shop class in high school and whatnot, and that's what that character is about. And then they, of course, told all their friends and all this sort of stuff. Like it's always worth a shot if at all possible. Find out the next time Nine Inch Nails is touring, and because Trent Reznor kind of famously uh, worked in a really small recording studio in Cleveland, Ohio, before getting famous, and talked about cleaning up rock stars' pubes off the toilets and stuff like that. Be like the only one in the autograph line after the show who's like not like trying to like latch onto him and like bawl and give him poetry written in their own blood. Just be like, here, you might find this funny, and just walk away. Confuse the hell out of them. It's like, okay, what does she want in exchange for this book? Tell your friends, that's what I want. But I think my days of giving a crap about Nine Inch Nails are long, long, long over. Actually did meet Trent once in an autograph line in like 2000 when I still cared about Nine Inch Nails. It's funny. I knew I wanted to get an autograph, so I came prepared with like a fistful of Sharpies, you know, and whichever Sharpie he had, he would kind of made a comment to. It was running out of ink. He made a comment to his tour manager. Hey, this one's running out of ink, and I was just like, oh, you need a Sharpie? Here, like pulling one out of my pocket. Here you go, thanks. I'd already gotten an autograph from him, so I'm just like walking away, and he just sort of took a minute. And he's like, "Oh, thanks," because I think there was a minute where he's like, "What does this woman want in exchange for this like 95 cent marker?" Um, but I had a whole bunch of them, and so it's like, "Here you go, have one. I don't need them." And then I was waiting at the time. I don't know if I had a driver's license. I might have had a driver's license already, but I didn't have my own car. Um, so I was waiting for actually my mom to come and pick me up at I think at that point it was called GM Place, but now the in recent years it's called Rogers Arena in Vancouver. So I'm like sitting at the designated spot waiting for her to come in, and different fans who'd been in the autograph lineup walked up. He's like, "You met you touched him, blah blah blah. How come did you get the Sharpie?" I'm like, "What? The Sharpie that was running out. Did you get it?" "No. Why?" "Well, he touched it." I'm like, "I have a drawer full of half dead Sharpies at home. Like, I don't need any more pens that don't work." And they're like, "But it was his." I'm like, Who would believe me anyways? A story like that. "Oh, yes, this is the, holy Sharpie that Trent Reznor held." You know? No, who cares? But, anyways, fandom is a whole interesting phenomenon, but and actually that, I mentioned that, sea rat infestation episode of the Ricky B. Rat podcast from, at this point, I guess it's a couple years ago, a year and a half ago or something. Um, it would which I think will eventually become a graphic novel because I think there's a lot of visually funny things in it, but, that definitely has a lot to do with, obsessed fans and all that sort of stuff. It's something I wanted to kinda get into when I was doing the Nick White show, but first I wanted to spend some time, like, establishing who Nick White was, and in that fictional world, he's, like, the 2nd biggest rock star of the 1980s. He's an absolute scumbag. Um, and then by the time I got to the point where it's like, "Okay, I think we've established enough world building now. Now we can get into, dynamics of, like, fan rock star interactions and, celebrity culture and all these, highfalutin kind of concepts I wanted to get into, but by then, I was burned out on the project, and I just kinda wasn't doing it anymore, so anyways. Uh-oh. Laptop decided I didn't touch it, recently enough, so now it went sleepy, but now I've got my chat monitoring back. Anyways. Let's do a bit of a 3D effect on this kind of starbursty background whatever around the toilet brush. Probably gonna ignore this kind of burst there and just do the burst around this text here. So let's get to it. Excuse me. Let's do that with the medium nib, eh? Kinda like with the Russian subs ad, I think it gives a it's better to kinda go thicker with the nib that's designed to do that rather than kinda just go over it multiple times with the thinner nib that doesn't want to cooperate. Now, I'm not too worried about getting that close to the edge here because all the pages in the book, or not all of them, but most of them are going to have a border so that whatever I draw is going to be located inside of a black border that's about a half inch wide all around, or black margin, I guess. So that's not going to be like stuck in the gutter of the book or risking getting cut off. It's going to be protected by the black border. So it would be something like that. I think this goes on this side of the paper. Oh, let me bump that over. So this is going to look kind of like that. Um, within a anyways, I'm running out of room on the margin here, but kind of decided to do it that way because I do have a tendency to draw super close to the panel edges and whatnot. So by doing it this way, we don't have to worry about that. And so yeah, tomorrow or Sunday, when my pals from church ask me how my book is going, I'll be like, "Oh, great! I drew my main character sticking his boss's head in a toilet, and and I drew an ad for nuclear subs, and I drew an ad for a toilet brush." But it's all kind of it's all part of the plot. Helps set the world, and some of this stuff because this is the first Ricky B. Rat graphic novel. It's also not so much even about the story of this book. It's about setting up future books where we will have more conflict with Big Mike. um, and eventually with Intern Dave and all these other guys. So kind of makes sense from a world building perspective to take the time with these sorts of ads. Like, I think the first or second um, ad spread has an ad, and I think at this point I did it 4 to 6 weeks ago on stream, but it has an ad for Roy's Dispensary, which is we will eventually find out is run by Ricky's uncle Roy. Um, but that's not part of this book. Um, Anyways, now we have this month's special industrial strength toilet cleaner. And what I'm going to do is do some swoopy kind of things. I'm not actually sure if I like these dots in the background, but I'm gonna just carry on with them now because it's easier to, I can always erase them in Mr. Photoshop when we get to that time. But I think what I am gonna put down here is and yeah, I think we will definitely be making adjustments to the background here, but we'll do that in Photoshop later. The other thing is I can always, when it's dry, kind of trace this and where the handle is in the 2 for 1, and then I kind of know, if I make another one of these kind of bursts or whatever, or however I'm going to do the background, then I know the exact area that I have to work with, right? So, but for now, I'm just going to finish the pattern as started. And I may even decide to um, sort of trace this area and then do this month's special to match that. Instead of having it suddenly be vertical, I may make it italic and sort of draw the outlines, and I would do that on a separate piece of Bristol board where I know the exact amount of space I have to work with, and then ink it, and then when it gets scanned together, we bring them together in Photoshop. But I'll think about that because I kind of do like this lettering. It's the burst outline, whatever, that I'm kind of going like, oh, that didn't actually work. Anyways, these things are all fixable. So let's have us a review of what we have done so far today, or done today. Um, and I'll actually start with the review from the last Friday show a few weeks ago. That's where the story left off. That um, Big Mike and Ricky are kind of having this. I wouldn't go so far as to say argument because that would require Ricky to tell Big Mike to F off or whatever. But discussion where Ricky's pissed and he was asking about submarines and Big Mike's being Big Mike. So he tells the kid him about the Russians taking um, suckers down to the Titanic. I don't think they do that anymore, but they used to. So then we have the story interrupted with this advertisement. In Russia, subs nuke you. Bit of a nod to Yakov Smirnov's um, style of joke telling. Have crypto, we'll take you to the Titanic. We've got the little bit of the Titanic. We got the nuclear clouds. We got a little rat dude poking out of the window at the front. SS Dumturist. Um, so we've got that ad for those subs. And then the story resumes because it's going to still be a little while before Ricky notices these freaking ads popping up yet, but that will be the B story when it happens. So then we have Big Mike grabs the last slice of pizza and then tells Ricky to go clean the toilets because he's done with discussing with Ricky. So Ricky's cleaning the very disgusting toilets while imagining grabbing Big Mike, flipping him upside down, sticking his head in the toilet and going, just dunking him up and down. And Big Mike going glug, 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 glug. That's kind of a foreshadowing. We see that glug, 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 glug much later in the book. Although that might be, I think it is actually in the back third of the book that we're not going to actually ink on stream because that would be spoilers. But, you know, it will turn up. Anyways, so Ricky's seething about Big Mike. And as he's cleaning the toilet, well, now the next B story interrupting is the ad for Intern Depot. Clean enough for your a-hole boss to eat shit off of. And like I said, I may redo this area of the ad to match the text up there. But that's something that can be done later. So then that is our little Friday stream. We'll leave it there. Um, and thank you for watching and tune in again next Friday for more of Ricky. And then Monday we are streaming. We are working on Ricky's girlfriend's cousin Miles's book. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Noah's Archipelago stuff. Wednesday, Selma the Destroyer. But like I said, next Friday for more of Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat. And as I am looking at this, I realized I forgot to fill in the floor in this little area. So let's just quickly do that, shall we? Just a little scribble is all it takes. And there we go. Now we've got um, a black floor that's also just completely disgusting. Although I guess if those are pee puddles, they wouldn't really show up on a black floor, but I don't know. Who knows what they are? They're probably barf. You know. Anyways, the point is the bathroom in the recording studio is disgusting and Ricky has been put on cleaning duty. Anyways, so Ricky's having fun on a Friday night. Actually, I think this is a Monday afternoon, but never mind. Anyways, have a great weekend, folks, and we will see you again real soon. Bye for now, and bye-bye, Ricky. Bye-bye, Big Mike. Take care. Bye.